Well, good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock in the morning today on October 25th. I can't believe it is the end of October already, but my calendar tells me it is. So I'm glad to have all of you with me. Welcome back to Building Your Skills, Developing a Support Plan. This is episode 14, approving the support plan and service authorization. So happy to see so many of you with us. And thanks for coming along with us on this journey. So let's get into it today. As usual, I've got some instructions for you regarding connecting to WebEx. I do always suggest that you connect your audio by the best way possible for you, whatever that is. Oftentimes, if I'm having connectivity issues, the call me method is the best way to still participate in the meeting. So that might be something that you find helpful as well. You are automatically on mute and will be that way throughout the duration of the presentation, but we still do want to hear your questions or see your questions in this case. So to ask a question during the presentation, you're going to use the Q&A panel in WebEx. That will be located near the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We want to make sure that you set your ask to all panelists to make sure all of our panelists will be able to see your question. This does not mean, however, that all of the participants will be able to see your question, just us panelists behind the scene. So if you need to ask a question that you don't want everyone to answer, feel free to set it to all panelists as well. And just let us know that you prefer a private response back, but use that Q&A box throughout the presentation to ask any questions about anything that we are presenting. All right, our agenda today, we are going to go through our survey results from August, and then we will get into our presentation today, which again is service authorization and approving the support plan. So our August survey results, thank you guys so much for responding to our survey. We had 62 total responses. And as you can see by our graphs here on this slide, the vast majority of the folks who attended were case managers, care coordinators, and assessors from the majority lead agency. We do have some contracted agencies that responded. Spread the word to your contracted agency partners. We would love to have them attend. We want to make sure that the words that we're saying, that the training that we're giving is reaching as many people as possible. But excited to see that 95% of the 62 folks who responded last time we presented did plan to attend the next presentation, which is today. So I hope that I see you in our list of participants today. So some themes that we saw in our surveys, and again, we do read every single one of these, and we use them as kind of a springboard in how we can make these trainings better. Participants do want greater detail on examples. They want us to use challenging scenarios, things like what to do when there's no service available, when there's no informal supports, when the person's not really looking to have services, they're uncooperative. They have a limited understanding, even with extensive explanation, maybe mental health concerns that interfere with discussions, things like that. And we will take that to heart when rewriting these to put them online and see if we can't get some more real life situations in there because we know that's what you guys are dealing with on a daily basis. Some feedback that we received as well, it would be good to have many different examples of backup plans. Thank you for that. More about assistive technology. People don't know what they don't know, and assistive technology is a larger field than most think. That's absolutely true. We did do a presentation about assistive technology previously. If you did not attend that session, please do take a look back at our training archive page, and you can take a look at the recording as well as the presentation itself. More variety in examples, and show us an example of a good backup plan, as well as a backup plan that needs additional work so that we can see what level our work compares to. You know that we're always hesitant to give you examples so that you can use them as far as a springboard goes, but we'll see what we can do when we are writing those trainings again for online modules. Okay, so thank you for your feedback. Again, after today's session, you will have the opportunity to fill out the survey, and we do, again, read every single one of them, and we collate all of your responses and take that into account when writing these modules for online training. So let's get into our Building Your Skills series episode for today. Just again, a little background on where we are coming from in this particular session. We decided to give these trainings, this Building Your Skills session, because we received feedback from you, case managers, care coordinators, assessors, that we want training on building support plans. And we are providing that. We want it to be foundational, kind of beginning at the basics. And we want to use these opportunities to pilot those topics and get your feedback on whether that was effective so that we can gather information to create online modules so that we can have repeated training that's at a foundational level for the future. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Who's with us today? These are our panelists behind the scenes who will be working to answer any questions. Also, they are our content experts. So they were integral in writing the actual content of this presentation and all of our presentations. So I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves. And I will actually start because I realized I didn't introduce myself. So my name is Lauren Harrington. I am the Case Management Training Specialist here with DSD. I am a 40-year-old white woman with blondish hair, turning more white with every day, and I am wearing a black hooded sweatshirt. And I will turn it over to Andrew Johnson to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Andrew Johnson, Support Planning and Informed Choice Team Lead. He, him, his pronouns, and I am wearing a blue plaid shirt today. Thank you for having me.
Even though you are not on camera, I am sure you look very nice in your blue plaid shirt. We will have Sarah Beauchesne introduce herself next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Beauchesne, and I am the Informed Choice Policy Specialist on the Support Planning and Informed Choice team. Thanks for joining us today.
Right, next, Victoria, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I am Victoria Stelfox. I'm the Support Planning Policy Specialist. I am in my 40s with blonde highlights, wearing a gray sweater, and enjoying this cloudy afternoon, almost day. Let's just say morning, not quite afternoon. But yeah, I'll pass it on to Kathy.
Kathy, I don't know if you have been added to our panelists at this point, so you might have to.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I do have my camera on, so hopefully somebody can see me.
I can see you now.
I'm Kathy Vondrum. I am the MnChoice's Policy Specialist for Aging and Adult Services Division. I have kind of dark grayish hair pulled up in a clip, and I have a blue and brown striped sweater on today. So good morning, everybody. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And we also have Tam, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, from Lead Agency Review. If you are in our panelist list, if you could just introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tom Glasgow. I'm an evaluator with the Lead Agency Review team. I am in my 40s, wearing a gray sweater this morning.
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for joining us. Again, these folks are our panelists behind the scenes. They will be helping us to answer any questions that come in through the use of our Q&A panel. Again, use that Q&A panel in WebEx to provide feedback. Again, we are only going to make those question and answers visible to the panelists only. If we don't get to your questions because of time constraints or if they are not within the subject matter of today's presentation, we are able to be reached. You can direct your questions to us via the DSD contact form or email directly over to Aging and Adult Services. Okay. So episode 14, approving the support plan and service authorization. Let's get started. So if you recall from previous episodes, we've discussed quite a few things, kind of from the beginning of support planning all the way to today. So we've talked about the assessment process and results, including how those results impact the planning process. We've talked about the importance of researching and gathering information about service and support options to help that person to make an informed choice about their available options. We've also talked about information to share with the person to get them ready to prepare them for their role in building this support plan. And we've talked about the concept of support types. So those support types, again, were people in community, assistive technology, as well as services within a person's support plan. We also talked about CDCS, consumer-directed community supports, and own home and provider controlled options. We talked about those for the people that we serve as well. Recently, we've been talking about informed choice requirements as well as their importance to the people that we serve, as well as the concept of dignity of risk and its relation to the informed decision-making process. Last time that we presented in August, we talked about the necessity of having a backup plan in the case that things don't go as planned. And today we'll be moving forward into the next step of our process. If you missed a previous Building Your Skills episode and you want to find out more about any of the topics that we've already covered, you can find them on the training archive page. There's a link in our resources slides, but if you like, the easiest way to find it, I think, is to just Google Minnesota DHS Training Archive. It's usually the first link that pops up. You do have to scroll down a little to the Building Your Skills section, but all of the recorded trainings and presentations that we've given in this series should be listed there. So our learning objectives for today, when this training is complete, you'll be able to define service authorization. You'll be able to summarize the care coordinator and case manager's responsibilities in regards to service authorization. And you'll be able to summarize the care coordinator and case manager's responsibilities when approving the support plan. Last, you will be able to describe what it means when the person, their chosen supports, and the service provider sign off on the support plan. So note that we're going to be using the person as a phrase in this presentation. And what that means is that the person is referring to the person who's receiving services. We're going to be speaking of them as though they are the ones that are making decisions on their own, although we do realize that a lot of people do make decisions with support from their families or their legal representatives. So just want to clarify that for you. So let's talk a little bit about our support planning process. Where did we leave off? Well, the assessor's role at this time is really complete. They've completed the LTSS assessment. At this point as well, the case manager or care coordinator has provided the person and their family with access to assessment, person-centered planning, referral, linkage, support plan monitoring, coordination, and advocacy related to their services, as well as resources and informal supports. The case manager or care coordinators do need to review the long-term services and supports or LTSS assessment, which people commonly refer to as the Min Choices assessment. And they need to refer to that information to help people determine service eligibility. So case managers and care coordinators also support a person's right to informed choice regarding their services and supports. The person would make choices based on an informed decision-making process that reflects their unique goals, their cultural needs, and other preferences related to how they wish to have their services provided. The person also makes their choices in the context of eligibility and cost effectiveness. All of those choices result in case managers and care coordinators creating a support plan, which we formerly called the Coordinated Services and Support Plan, or CSSP, that really identifies clearly the person's goals, interests, preferences, any supports, including people in community organizations or assistive technology and service providers that also support the person, And when documenting those services, the case manager or care coordinator needs to indicate the type of service, the amount of service, the duration of the service, and how the service will support those actual goals. So what now? What's next? Well, the case manager or care coordinator needs to follow state and federal requirements along with lead agency procedures to authorize services. For example, they authorize services that address the person's assessed needs, that are cost effective, and were chosen by the person. They also need to review and finalize the support plan, ensuring that all required details are included in order to support that person. They then need to share the complete support plan with the person, their providers, and any others that the person chooses. This step also does include gathering required signatures. They also need to monitor the quality of services for the people with whom they work. So they are working, case managers and care coordinators, to protect the person's privacy, their rights, and health and safety. They'll also perform monitoring in meetings like the 45-day meeting, which we'll talk about more, during phone contacts with the person, and maybe other points throughout the year where they may need to speak to the person or as agreed upon with the person. They also need to coordinate and communicate support changes by updating the support plan throughout the year and providing support plan information to providers based on a person's choice. Again, privacy laws limit what can be shared, but if the person does give permission, that needs to be shared with those providers as well. And as a part of planning, monitoring, and coordination, case managers and care coordinators share information about the person's needs and preferences with the assessor completing the person's annual reassessment. Providers should share this information throughout the year as well as leading up to the person's annual reassessment. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this particular content in our December Building Your Skills section. So let's talk a little bit about service authorization. How does that process work? Before you dive into service planning, rates and all the requirements of service authorization, case managers and care coordinators, you need to review the plan for services with the person. You need to confirm that the person's selected services align with both their preferences as well as their assessed needs. We also need to verify their chosen providers. You may have done this already at the support planning meeting, but if you haven't, we need to verify this at this time. And remember, throughout the support planning process, you've already considered a lot. You've considered things like the person's assessed needs. You've identified the needs that are not being met independently or through informal supports or assistive technology. You've also considered what type and frequency of services might be needed, the available amount of services based on the person's needs and their location and the capacity of providers in their areas. You've also confirmed and thought about the person's selected providers and whether they meet the standards and qualifications for these services being authorized. Confirming that they meet standards and qualifications can be done through minhelp.info or provider enrollment or via the licensing lookup. Service standards and provider qualifications are also listed in the CBSM. So service requirements, services and supports must have prior authorization in the support plan and meet service requirements, including that they must directly benefit the person or provide caregiver relief. They must also be cost effective. They must ensure the person's health, safety, or well-being. They must meet an assessed need. They must also support the person's desires, needs, and preferences, and meet service guidelines and be within allowable rates and be within the allowable budget or case mix cap amounts. If the person chooses traditional services rather than CDCS, it is a case manager or care coordinator's responsibility to determine the rate of the service, assuring that it aligns with the person's preferences and assessed needs. They also need to complete referrals to new providers or update existing providers if there are any service changes. They also need to generate a service agreement with all of the service details. as well as providing advance notice and completing a notice of action if there's a denial or termination or reduction of services. Just as a reminder, all new 245D service providers are required to have a 45-day meeting. That meeting does need to include the case manager, either virtually or in person, and the person should share their experience with their services and review how their plan is going. If any changes are needed to the plan of support, the person and their team should discuss it at that meeting. We'll talk about some of those things in more detail in December's presentation of Building Your Skills. If the person chooses to self-direct their service using CDCS, it is a case manager or care coordinator's responsibility to confirm that the person is eligible for CDCS, to complete referrals to a support planner if they request it, as well as a financial management services provider or FMS. They also need to provide the person and their support planner, if applicable, the annual CDCS budget, and generate a service agreement with the FMS support planner and MA state plan home care service details. Just a reminder regarding approval and monitoring of the service plan, like traditional service planning, the case manager or care coordinator is still required to approve and monitor the plan of services that the person creates. For CDCS, this includes monitoring financial records from the FMS provider. Regardless of the person's choice, and in addition to service authorization, a case manager or care coordinator must provide advance notice if there's a denial, termination, or reduction of services, must also complete a notice of action, which is Form DHS 2828B, or an MCO denial, termination, or reduction form. Take a look at the links that are provided for additional information regarding advanced notice requirements, but we will also review the notice of action in more detail in December. So once the person has chosen the type of service and provider that they want, the case manager must complete a service agreement. The service agreement documents service details that are required for service authorization, including things like the service name and their HCPC code, if applicable. Not all services require HCPC codes or ordering provider information. They also need to provide the provider's name and NPI, the date span, the units that they're authorizing, the rate, and the frequency, and again, ordering provider if applicable. A service agreement also includes personal health information, like a person's PMI, that allows all systems to exchange accurate data. So let's talk a little bit about rates and budgets more specifically. There are 3 categories of rates for disability waivers. Those disability waivers are CAC, CADI, BI, and DD. Combined, all of those rates categories are called the Disability Waiver Rate System. And it includes framework rates, market rates, and predetermined rates. So framework rates, they're established rates that are based on uniform processes that capture the individual nature of the service and the person's needs using the rate management system, or RMS. Market rates are established through negotiation with the provider to determine a reasonable rate based on the person's need. And then lastly, a predetermined rate. This is determined by the legislature and published in DHS 3945, Long-Term Services and Supports Service Rate Limits. You'll notice that there are links on this slide. If you have any questions, there's links directly to the CVSM pages and resources so that you can take a look at those. You won't be able to click directly on the links on your screen, but if you did pre-register for this presentation, you should have received the PDF copy of this presentation in your email. And you can click the links in there. If you didn't receive that, again, the training archive page is where this is posted, and you'll be able to go into the training archive page, open up that PDF, and click the links. Disability waivers currently do not have statewide set budgets. Rather, DHS awards annual budgets to each lead agency for disability waiver services, and those lead agencies must approve and plan for current and future needs for the people receiving services through them. Each lead agency's annual budget is administered and monitored through the Waiver Management System, or WMS. There are additional trainings regarding the rate management system and the waiver management system that are available in the DSD training archive. So definitely take a look at those if you need more information. Similar to disability services, aging services also have a rate methodology, which includes 3 types of rates: state established rates, market rates, and residential services. So state established rates, again, are determined by the Minnesota legislature and published in DHS 3945. Market rates, again, established through negotiation with the provider to determine a reasonable rate that is based on the person's needs. And again, those are published in DHS 3945. And residential services, or RS tool. These are established rates that are based on uniform processes that capture the individual nature of the service and the person's needs using the RS tool. For aging, budgeting looks a little different and includes things like the elderly waiver and alternative care waiver, EW or AC. They have monthly case mix budgets in which a total dollar amount available per month, and that must include all HCBS and home care services. Case mix amounts are also published again in the DHS 3945. That is the LTSS service rate limits document. Monthly case mix budgets. These are hard words to say all together early in the morning. Those are based on the person's case mix classification, which is determined by their needs and abilities as documented during their initial assessment. So once rates are determined and service details have been entered into the support plan, the case manager or care coordinator can use the MinChoices application to generate a service agreement. With that service agreement, which matches the support plan information, lead agencies can enter the service authorization in one of 2 systems. So fee for service is entered into MMIS. This includes all the disability programs and some people on aging programs. And managed care is entered into an authorization system determined by each MCO. Most people on aging programs receive service coordination through an MCO. Service authorization also must align with the person's waiver span, which identifies both the beginning and end date for waiver program eligibility. The waiver span can begin no earlier than the assessment effective date and last no longer than 1 year. The service agreement process is important because it creates prior authorization for all services and supports, and that's required by the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare. I said that backwards. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, CMS. Once the service agreement is completed, a service provider can bill and receive payment. The billing and receiving of payment is referred to as claims, and it must match the service agreement to be eligible for payment. DHS and MCOs can monitor claims to ensure services are prior authorized and that they align with what's described in the support plan. In most cases, providers have up to 1 year to submit claims for services that they've provided. Remember, throughout the service authorization process, there must be a documented need in the support plan for all services authorized. There cannot be a duplication of services. Also, the service or good must be the most cost-effective way to meet the person's needs. After the case manager or care coordinator has ensured the service agreements have been entered either into MMIS or the MCO system, they are responsible for monitoring these services. We'll be talking about that in greater depth in December. So let's take a pause and see what questions you guys have regarding service authorization. So again, at this time, if you do have questions, please go ahead and type those into your Q&A panel, which is at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Make sure that your ask is set to all panels so that the panelists can review your questions. I'm going to pause here to see if we do have any questions that need to be answered. Andrew or someone else, can you let us know if there are any questions that you guys would like to answer at this point?
Thank you. I'm just taking a look now, and I'm not seeing any additional questions, there was a question that a person asked earlier as to if we could provide the link for provider lookup. We added that to the chat. It's also included in the slide deck, so please take a look at that later. There was also a question that just came in that asked, can you please define what MCO stands for? Yes, MCO is an acronym for Managed Care Organization.
Excellent. And I did notice that there may be a hand up. We are not going to be taking questions verbally, so please do use that Q&A panel to type your question in, and our panelists will be able to review that.
Yeah, there's one additional question that came in here, Lauren. It says, will there be a training that will actually show us how to use the MinChoice's support plan application to write a support plan? I believe that's they're saying. And the answer to that is there are training modules available within the application that a person can access. And if you have questions, please reach out to your MinChoice's mentor or your supervisor for additional information on how to access that training.
Excellent. Any other questions, Andrew, at this point?
I think there's a couple more that came in, but if you want to move forward, we'll kind of take those in and see if we can put together a response for those questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you all for putting your questions in the Q&A panel. We'll have our panelists working behind the scenes to find the answers for you. All right, so moving forward, the next section that we want to talk about is finalizing and signing the plan. So after the service agreement information is complete, the plan is ready to be reviewed, finalized, and signed. And Andrew, I'm going to ask you to put yourself on mute. Thank you. Excellent. All right, so a couple of reminders regarding support planning. So what's important for the case manager or care coordinator to remember when support planning? Well, a few very important things. The person's support plan is to be completed within 60 days of the person's assessment. And there's a link there to section 245D.07 in Minnesota statute. For MSHO and MSC Plus, which are managed care organizations, the contractual timeline is 30 days. Start, as we've talked about through our entire series, talking about the whole person, identifying people and community supports and how they can help the person, talking about, really who and what is surrounding that person that can help to support that idea of a whole person. At this point, it's also helpful to double check a few things when finalizing the support plan. Things like, does the plan describe how it will be monitored? Has the person made an informed choice? Have they had an opportunity to get information and understand all of their available service options? Are the goals that are included meaningful goals for the person? Have referrals been made to that person's chosen providers? And have alternatives been discussed if service or support is refused by the person or unavailable, or maybe there's unmitigated risk for that person? Has the person been provided their budget information, including self-direction or CDCS options? All of those are good things to double check when finalizing. The case manager or care coordinator should provide the person and their providers a draft of the support plan. We want them to review the plan and support the person based on their needs and answer any questions that the person might have. We also want to collect the person and provider's signatures to approve and acknowledge the plan. The person can make changes after signing the plan, but those changes do need to be modified in MMIS or within the MCO's authorization system, Only then should the support plan be moved to plan approved within MinChoices. So a couple of reminders, the person's support plan can only be shared with people and organizations that the person has given consent to share it with. It's important that the person understands this and the importance and impacts of sharing the support plan with their providers, including the need for sharing service details and information that will help them to receive care. The person must be asked to sign the appropriate release of information consent forms before you share the support plan. When creating or revising that person's support plan, do also remind the person that you're going to be sharing the support plan with the appropriate providers and confirm consent with that person if you need to. A case manager or care coordinator can include or remove various portions of the plan to meet that person's privacy requests when sharing their support plans. So if they only want a specific portion sent to a specific provider, that is allowed. So the signature sheet is included within the MinChoices application and must be signed by the person and their providers. The case manager or care coordinator must ensure that the person is aware of and agrees that their signature is acknowledging the plan for services and supports that they will receive. Regarding choice, this signature means that the person's also acknowledging that they received informed choice, including accurate and complete information about all available services. Also, that they understand their right to informed choice and that they're confirming that they've taken an active role in choosing their services. The efforts to support the person in understanding their choices and understanding their plan must be documented by the case manager or care coordinator within the person's support plan or within case notes. Within the signature page, there's a list of statements that the case manager or care coordinator needs to review with the person before asking them to sign their support plan. And they are, I was given a choice between receiving services in the community or in an institution. I was able to invite who I wanted to come to my planning meeting. I participated in developing my plan for receiving services. I was given choices of different types of services, housing, and employment support that could meet my assessed needs as indicated in my assessment and through discussion with my case manager. I was offered a choice of all available services, support, and providers. I agree with the services, support, and providers indicated in my plan. I understand if I do not agree with any part of my written support plan, I can call my case manager, assessor, or care coordinator to discuss and make corrections as needed. I also understand I have the right to appeal any decision I disagree with. I understand my case manager, assessor, or care coordinator will send this signature page to me with my written plan. One of those that strikes me as something that we may need to explain a little bit more, that first statement, I was given a choice between receiving services in the community or in an institution. What does that really mean? Well, federal requirements state that the case manager or care coordinator must inform the person that they're choosing waiver services as an alternative to institutional care. To help a person understand what that means, you might say something like, I'm required to inform you that these services are a Medicaid alternative to institutions and confirm that you're choosing them as an alternative to receiving institutional care. And to explain that, maybe care like you'd receive in a nursing facility or the like. And let each person know if they don't understand what something means, to ask for clarification so that they have the information needed to make these acknowledgments. Service providers, apart from purchased item providers, must review and sign the support plan. The provider's signature indicates their acknowledgement of the services and supports in the plan and their agreement to deliver them as outlined. The case manager or care coordinator must make 2 attempts to get a provider's signature, which can be documented in MinChoices. The first attempt needs to be made within the first 30 days after the plan is complete, and the second attempt should be made within 60 days. There is a CBSM page, CBSM FAQs about provider signature requirements for HCBS support plans, and that will provide additional details regarding provider signature requirements. There is also instructions, or are also instructions, for documenting signatures and attempts. And you can find those within the Help Center training in MinChoices, and it's titled Smart Guide Support Plan. And if you have any questions regarding how to use the MinChoices application, take a look at the Help Center first and then talk to your MinChoices mentor or supervisor. So some additional documents. It's essential that the case manager or care coordinator provide the following information to the person and supports. Supports them, supports them as needed to understand those documents. So the data privacy practices that explain my right to confidentiality. So DHS form 4839E, or the agency may have their own form. Minnesota Healthcare Programs, DHS form 3182. My appeal rights were shared with me, so Form 3214A or 3214D, or a managed care organization form, and any other information based on the person's needs and preferences. So what we mean about supporting them to understand. So for example, if I were to give the person my appeal rights were shared with me, what does that mean for the person? Does the person understand their rights? And how do you check to make sure that they understand? Who might they contact if they feel their rights have been violated? And does the person need any accommodations to understand the information? If so, make sure that those accommodations are coordinated and provided to the person so that they really understand what they're signing. So at this point, the plan is now completed and the service agreement is approved, but the case manager or care coordinator does still have responsibilities. And we've talked a little bit about those, but they need to monitor the support plan. And again, if the person has a 245D provider that's new, verifying that a 45-day meeting takes place for them, as well as that provider. Also, revising the person's support plan when there's a significant change in the person's supports or services is also a responsibility. This is what we're going to talk about more in December in our Building Your Skills session. So at this point, we are at our last chance for question and answers. Oh, that went fast today. But I am going to turn over the microphone to Andrew Johnson to see what questions have come through.
Yes, we have a question here that asks about what all needs to be included in the support instructions for a service line. The support instructions are really intended to document how the person wants a service or any type of support delivered. It could include information about, when a service is delivered, how they want it delivered. And it's also, if you think about important to and important for a person, what do they need that provider to do, and what would they like them to do? So you might think of it as what is preferred and what is needed as well. Let's see, there's also another question that came in asking for us to provide examples of duplication of services. That question, I guess, when you think about duplication, you might consider thinking about the roles and responsibilities of each support or service. And when you have similar roles with shared responsibilities, those are likely duplicative. An example of that might be, there are residential services that include different service components, and you cannot authorize a service in conjunction with residential services that has that responsibility already included. I think a common example of that we hear of is authorizing the 24-hour monitoring or emergency assistance in addition to, say, a residential services line. And again, if you have additional questions on these, please submit them via the DSD contact form. All right, I think that's what we have for now. If we could move on.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's take a look here. So again, where are we in our learning roadmap? Well, today we explore the vital realms of service authorization and the approval of support plans. This is really the juncture where the gears start turning, where the person receives the services that enable them to embrace their life on their terms, ushering in independence and fulfillment, hopefully. With every authorization and support plan approval, we're not just endorsing paperwork. We're greenlighting this person's dreams, ambitions, aspirations. And this work is a profound testament to our commitment to helping people live their life to the fullest, without obstacles and without limitations. So coming up next time, we talked about this a lot today, but we'll be talking about support plan monitoring requirements in December. We'll talk more about details and in the e-list announcement as we get a little bit closer to the webinar date. The date again of that webinar is December 20th of this year. I know it's right before Christmas, but we were hoping to get one more session in before the end of the year. So mark your calendars, please register for that training presentation. And in December, we will also have a more clear idea of where the series will go in 2024. So we'll talk a lot about that then as well. So again, thank you. Your role in this organization, in your organization, is truly indispensable. You empower the people that you support to make informed decisions while building their support plan. Your unwavering commitment ensures that people have the opportunity to live the life that they envision. We genuinely appreciate your dedication and the meaningful impacts that you make on a daily basis. Thank you so much for your work. We can't say this enough. And also, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that I finally changed the picture to some cookies that reflect our beautiful fall season. It's been a snowman and kids for, the entire year. I thought I would finally get seasonally appropriate pictures in here. Let's take an opportunity before we go through our resources to check in again to see if our panelists have received any additional questions. Andrew, has anything new come through?
I'm seeing some additional questions, but I think we'll ask that those questions be submitted via the DSD contact form. Thank you.
All right, so if your question was not able to be answered today, do submit that through our DSD contact form and we will be able to get a question to you directly, or an answer to you directly. We're not going to question you anymore. So moving us forward, we do have resources listed in the back of our presentation as we do each time we present. Those are listed on the last few slides. Again, you can click in the links on the PDF copy of this presentation that was either sent to you in your email, or you can find that directly at DSD's training archive page. When you do get to the training archive page, notice that you do need to page down a little bit to see the Building Your Skills series, and that's where all of these presentations are housed. Once again, please do take some time out of your schedule to let us know your thoughts by completing our survey. These pieces of feedback, these suggested improvements, they allow us to cover the topics that are most important to you. We want to make sure that we're getting these right so that when we put them online, they cover the topics effectively. And the only way we can do that is to hear from you. So You will be directed to the survey once you close the WebEx meeting. You might see a notice that you're going to be directed to an external website. Looks a little bit like the screenshot here with the little orange triangle. Click continue and that'll take you right to the survey page. So once again, if your question was not answered during the webinar, send those questions regarding disability waiver services to the DSD contact form. Or if it is an aging and adult services specific question, do send an email directly to Aging and Adult Services. Again, our training archive page will have today's presentation. Actually, I believe it's already posted there, but the webinar recording will be posted within the next few days. Thank you all so much for attending. Again, everything that you do makes this work possible, and we're excited to see you in December to talk about monitoring the plan. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I hope that it eventually gets nice and sunny out, but I'm not too hopeful given our weather forecast. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your morning and a great rest of your day.